Hello and welcome to another weekly update. A couple of blog posts to talk to you about, one long and one short, and then a couple of other links as well. So I did two blog posts this week. The first one was considerably shorter than the second one. The second one took a bit of time to put together. The first one was around Skype Broadcast Meeting and the fact that some of the workloads that make up the Skype Broadcast Meeting are apparently moving over to Teams. Now this is actually kind of still fallout from Ignite. So Ignite is where lots of sessions happen in a very short space of time. Luckily, they are also recorded, so we can go back and kind of go over them in a bit kind of slower time period. And I'm doing that, and as part of that, came across this session about Skype Broadcast Meeting. And towards the end of it, there's a session about what's next. And in that information about what's next is some stuff around the fact that those experiences are going to be moving over to Teams. So where you schedule your Skype Broadcast Meeting is going to move to Teams. Where you do the production, that's going to move over to Teams. And then also the attendee process is maybe moving to Teams. So the attendee process at the moment is in the browser. And I think that's going to stay. But I think what they're getting at is the back end is going to be hosted on this kind of new Skype vNext kind of back end that we keep hearing about, that Teams is all built on. And I think Skype Broadcast System is also going to be moving to that. There's also a roadmap, actually, like a feature matrix of what's possible now and what's going to be possible in Skype Meeting Broadcast vNext. A couple of changes there that are worth looking through if you care deeply about meeting broadcast. The maximum audience size is getting a bump, which is good, and there's some new features coming to Mac, and the ability for presenters to dial in. One really big one, it's a small change with a big deal, and that's the ability to be able to reuse join links. So get join links that you don't get a different join link every time you stop and start the broadcast meeting. So that's actually surprisingly useful. And the other thing as well is kind of a pre-meeting curtains, so the ability to kind of white label up and brand the pre-meeting experience. So that's kind of cool. There's a whole video about it you can go and watch. I pulled out the screen captures for the relevant bits of information and put them in my blog post. If you just want to go and look at those, that's all there for you. The other blog post I did this week, I kind of started writing it last week, but it's just taken a while to put together. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I did a talk at Future Decoded with Gary Pretty and also Martin Keane from Microsoft. And as part of that, we demoed some cognitive services stuff. And one of the things that I demoed was using the Text Analytics API plus Microsoft Flow plus Azure plus Power BI to get a really cool kind of dashboard about sentiment of tweets. So positives, tweets, negative tweets, pulling out, for a given hashtag, is it mostly positive, is it mostly negative? What are the key words? And I had a couple of people ask me, like, how exactly is that put together? Because I kind of saw the demo and I didn't have time in the talk really to dig into it. I did have time to kind of go over the flow and just kind of very quickly run through it. I didn't have time to go into real detail. So I've taken the opportunity to put together a really detailed blog post about how exactly you can build up that flow. So if you want to build a flow in Microsoft Flow that takes tweets from a specific hashtag and then groups them using the Microsoft Cognitive Services, groups them into positive sentiment, negative sentiment, pulls out key phrases, also uses the Content Moderator API, so pulls out any kind of tweets that might have any kind of bad swear words in them. If you want to know how to do any of that or all of that, it's all in that blog post. So there's loads of screenshots as well. So kind of go there and you can walk through that whole process, and hopefully that'll be useful. Okay, switching tack slightly to some other things that have happened this week. There's been a couple of blog posts put out by Modality Systems, who are the company I work for, and this is a little bit, it's a really American term, inside baseball. So for me, it's kind of, it's interesting. and it's a series of blog posts about Confessions of a Project Manager, why Teams is great. And it's been written by Lindsay Ansell, who's a project manager at Modality Systems. In fact, Lindsay and I work on a lot of the same projects together, so I know her very well, and I know what she's talking about, and I know the things she's saying are true, and it's a good, well-written blog post about using Microsoft Teams and how Teams has changed, certainly how we kind of think about projects and how we run projects at Modality. It's made a really big difference to how we run our development projects. And that comes through in the post. So if you're looking for kind of a success story, if you're looking for not justification, but like where Teams might work in your organization and the kind of things it's good for, then yeah, maybe give this a go. Like read through the things, see if it resonates. It obviously does with me, but that's because I can directly relate to a lot of the things Lindsay's talking about. But I think it would resonate for you as well. It's in two parts. There's two blog post links I'll put in the notes. It's definitely worth a read there. The other big thing that happened this week is a new podcast. So a little while ago, the UC Architects podcast closed. They kind of stopped recording. It turned out to be too much effort. I think the format was like maybe not right, but then people, for a number of reasons, and I absolutely totally understand, because it's hard to find time for any of this stuff, and I kind of totally get all of that. The kind of podcast, they kind of stopped recording. Into that void, Pat Richards, who was one of the original people on the UC Architects podcast, has now started another podcast called UC Inside Track. It's a slightly different format. I think it's slightly shorter. I think it's going to be slightly more concise, and I think each time they're limiting it to one kind of person with Pat. So that certainly looks like it's the kind of format, but it's very, very early days because we are episode 1 of 1. So I'll put the link again to the notes. I believe it's also on iTunes, so you can go looking for it. I think it's good that we have a podcast like this in the community. I'm glad that Pat's doing it and I'm not, because I know how much work it is. So kudos to Pat, that's brilliant. I wish him all the best with the podcast. So that's excellent as well, that's happening. And so if you are looking for something to fill that space that UC Architects previously occupied, then you should go and look for the UC Inside Track podcast. All right, that's everything from me this week. Have a great week and a great week next week, and I shall speak to you soon.